Most people believe winter defeats homes for one simple reason: cold. That if temperatures drop low enough, no house can survive without fire. So we burn more fuel, build bigger stoves, fight harder. But that belief hides a bigger mistake. Cold air doesn't destroy warmth by itself. If it did, every house would fail instantly. What really breaks homes in winter is movement. Wind, instability, constant heat loss. And long before modern heating existed, some people understood this the hard way. They didn't fight winter with fire. They didn't try to overpower it. They built homes that avoided winter altogether. Homes that looked wrong, low, buried, quiet. And yet, somehow, they stayed warm all winter. Most people believe winter defeats homes because of cold. That idea feels obvious, comfortable, and wrong. If cold alone destroyed warmth, every house would fail the moment snow arrived. Yet some structures collapse quickly, others limp through, and a few remain livable with little effort. The difference is not temperature, it is movement. Wind is winter's real weapon. Moving air strips heat from walls faster than any fire can replace it. Every crack becomes a pump, pulling warmth outward, replacing it with instability. Generations responded by fighting harder. Bigger stoves, thicker walls, more fuel, longer nights feeding flames. Exhaustion became normal, and survival felt like work. This pattern repeated because effort looks like progress. A roaring fire feels powerful. Smoke signals action. But effort hides loss. Heat escapes invisibly, carried away by motion, pressure, and turbulence. Builders focused on adding energy instead of stopping leakage. They treated symptoms, not causes, and winter punished them every year. A few people questioned the assumption, not because they were smarter, but because they were tired. They noticed something simple. Calm spaces stayed warmer than busy ones. Cellars froze less often than living rooms. Caves felt steady, while houses fluctuated wildly. These observations did not sound heroic, they sounded boring. Yet boredom was stability, and stability meant survival. The breakthrough was not a new material or a stronger fire. It was a change in direction. Instead of confronting winter head-on, these builders stepped aside. They reduced exposure. They slowed air. They let mass do the work. Heat was no longer chased. It was kept. This choice looked strange. Low structures, buried walls, quiet interiors, no visible struggle. Neighbors mistook restraint for weakness. But winter does not respect appearances. It respects physics. When storms arrived, the loud solutions worked hardest and lost fastest. The quiet solutions barely noticed the weather. This story begins here, at the moment a false belief breaks. Cold is not the enemy. Movement is. And once that is understood, winter stops being something to fight and becomes something to avoid. That single shift, small and unglamorous, is the foundation for everything that follows. It reframes design, effort, and pride. It rewards patience over force, silence over spectacle. Once accepted, every decision changes. Where to build, how to shape walls, which battles matter. The lesson is simple, practical, and repeatable, and it will guide the rest of this story. Pay attention, because winter exposes mistakes quickly. Above ground, winter is aggressive. Air moves constantly. Wind accelerates. Every surface is attacked from all sides. Heat does not simply leave a building, it is pulled away. The faster the air moves, the faster warmth disappears. Fire tries to replace that loss, but it is always late. Winter takes first. Below ground, winter behaves differently. Air barely moves. Temperature changes slow to a crawl. Storms lose their power before they arrive. The earth does not fight cold. It absorbs change. And that single difference alters everything. Soil, stone, and packed earth act as thermal mass. They store heat and release it slowly. Not minutes later, but hours. Sometimes days. While air reacts instantly to weather, earth responds reluctantly. This delay is what early builders unknowingly exploited. They were not insulating in the modern sense. They were stabilizing. This is why cellars feel cool in summer and strangely warm in winter. Why caves remain steady while houses fluctuate wildly. Why underground spaces feel dull, heavy, and uneventful. That boredom is not failure. It is protection. Fire works best in stable environments. Without wind stripping heat away, a small flame can maintain warmth far longer than a roaring blaze in open air. Underground, heat is not constantly challenged. It settles. It accumulates. It stays. Early builders learned this through experience, not theory. They noticed that food stored underground rarely froze, that animals sheltered against earth survived harsh nights better than those exposed to air. That effort decreased when exposure decreased. These were not clever tricks. They were observations paid for with cold hands and long winters. The key insight was subtle. Warmth is not created once and lost. It is negotiated continuously. Above ground, winter renegotiates every second. Below ground, the terms barely change. By stepping into the earth, these builders stepped out of the fight. They were no longer trying to overpower winter. They were limiting how much winter could reach them at all. The environment did the work. Gravity, mass, and stillness replaced effort. This choice was invisible from the outside. No dramatic fires, no towering walls, no sign of struggle. But winter does not reward spectacle. It rewards systems that remove pressure instead of resisting it. Once that principle is understood, the logic of underground living stops looking strange and starts looking inevitable. This realization quietly separates survival from exhaustion, and it leads directly to designs that appear weak but endure the longest. Underground homes failed the first test humans used to judge anything: appearance. They did not look strong. They did not rise above the landscape. They did not announce confidence or dominance. They sat low, hidden, almost apologetic. And in a world where survival was often equated with toughness, that looked like weakness. For centuries, builders believed height meant safety. Taller walls kept threats away. Bigger fires signaled control. Visibility meant power. A home that disappeared into the ground seemed to reject all of that logic. It looked like something built by people afraid of winter rather than capable of facing it. This misunderstanding was not foolish. It was human. People trust what they can see working. A roaring fire feels effective. Thick smoke feels reassuring. Struggle feels like progress. Underground homes offered none of those signals. They were quiet. They did not advertise effort. And because they looked passive, they were dismissed. But winter does not evaluate courage. It evaluates exposure. Tall structures catch wind like sails. Every extra foot above ground increases surface area, pressure, and heat loss. Underground homes avoid that problem entirely. They reduce contact with moving air. They remove large surfaces from the storm. What appears small and insignificant is actually strategic. This is why the smartest designs are often rejected first. They do not align with instinct. They contradict pride. They replace visible effort with invisible restraint. And restraint looks wrong to people trained to equate survival with resistance. Neighbors mocked these homes because they could not see what mattered. They saw low ceilings instead of stable temperatures. They saw buried walls instead of reduced heat loss. They saw darkness instead of consistency. The benefits were internal, not performative. Winter revealed the truth slowly. During mild seasons, the difference barely mattered. But when storms lasted longer and temperatures stayed low, appearances collapsed. Exposed homes demanded constant attention. Fires needed feeding. Sleep was interrupted. Exhaustion became routine. Meanwhile, underground homes remained unchanged, not warmer in bursts, but steady over time. This contrast created discomfort. If something that looked weak performed better, then strength had been misunderstood. If quiet systems outlasted loud ones, then effort was not the same as effectiveness. That realization challenged more than architecture. It challenged identity. The mistake was never in the design. It was in the assumption that survival must look dramatic. Winter does not reward what looks strong. It rewards what leaks the least. And once that becomes clear, the homes that once looked like failures begin to look like the most honest response to the environment. Underground homes were rarely described as comfortable. They were dark. Ceilings were low. Light was limited. The air felt heavy and still. By modern standards, they seemed unpleasant places to spend time. Yet winter has never cared about comfort. It only tests survival. Above ground, warmth arrived in short bursts. A fire was fed, the room heated briefly, and then the cold returned. Nights were broken into shifts of tending flames. Sleep was shallow. Attention never stopped. Heat existed, but it was unstable. Below ground, the experience was different. Temperatures did not spike, but they did not crash either. The space stayed within a narrow range. Cold nights passed without urgency. Fires, if used at all, were small and infrequent. People slept through storms instead of waking to fight them. This difference mattered more than it appeared. Human bodies adapt poorly to fluctuation. Constant warming and cooling drains energy. It increases fatigue. It makes mistakes more likely. Stability, even at modest temperatures, preserves strength. It allows routine. It allows rest. Early builders learned this without language to describe it. They noticed that underground spaces demanded less attention, that fewer decisions were needed to stay alive. That effort could be redirected toward food, repair, and planning instead of constant crisis management. Comfort is seductive because it feels good immediately. Survival rewards what works over time. Underground homes prioritized the second over the first. They removed extremes rather than chasing peaks. The result was not luxury, but reliability. This distinction is often misunderstood. People assume survival means maximizing warmth. In reality, it means minimizing loss. A steady 45 degrees can outperform a swinging range between 30 and 60. Predictability matters more than intensity. Above ground, winter forced people to react. Below ground, winter was something to wait out. That psychological difference was as important as the physical one. Fear decreases when conditions are predictable. Confidence grows when systems behave consistently. Underground living did not eliminate hardship. It reduced chaos. And chaos is what kills first in extreme environments. When resources are limited, systems that demand constant input fail faster than those that quietly maintain balance. This is why comfort and survival are not the same goal. Comfort seeks immediate relief. Survival seeks continuity. Underground homes chose continuity. They traded brightness for calm, space for protection, and spectacle for endurance. In winter, that trade proved decisive. This story is not really about houses. Houses are only where the lesson becomes visible. What underground builders understood applies to any system pushed to its limits. Humans often respond to pressure by adding effort, more energy, more force, more activity. When something fails, we push harder. Winter exposes the weakness of that instinct. It shows how quickly effort can be consumed without solving the underlying problem. The underground approach worked because it reduced exposure instead of increasing resistance. It did not try to win a fight. It changed the conditions of the fight. That distinction separates fragile systems from resilient ones. Modern life is full of similar mistakes. We overwork instead of redesigning workflows. We add complexity instead of removing friction. We chase intensity instead of stability. The result looks impressive, but breaks easily. The strongest systems rarely appear strong. They are quiet. They are boring. They do not require constant attention. They avoid failure rather than responding to it. Underground homes embodied this principle long before it had a name. What made these designs powerful was not secrecy or cleverness. It was humility. Builders accepted the limits of their environment. They stopped demanding control and started working with constraints. Earth, gravity, and stillness became partners instead of obstacles. This mindset feels counterintuitive because it denies drama. There is no visible struggle, no heroic moment, no dramatic victory, just consistent performance over time. But survival is not a performance. It is an outcome. Winter does not reward pride. It rewards preparation. It does not care how hard something tries, only how well it holds together. Underground homes held together because they removed the conditions that caused failure in the first place. Once this lesson is understood, it becomes difficult to ignore. The question changes from, how do we fight this, to, how do we avoid needing to fight at all? That shift saves energy, attention, and resources. It replaces reaction with design. The builders who chose underground living were not seeking innovation. They were seeking relief. They wanted fewer decisions, fewer emergencies, fewer nights spent feeding fires. They found that relief by stepping out of exposure. That is the lasting lesson. Whether the challenge is winter, work, or life itself, systems endure when they minimize loss rather than chase strength. Stability beats intensity. Structure beats effort. And the solutions that last longest often look unimpressive until everything else fails.